Good afternoon. Welcome to the afternoon session. We are starting with a great lightning talk from Sanford Hess, IT Director from Urbana, Illinois. And he's going to talk about fast but not furious, how to implement open data in record time, which I think is of interest to many people. I'm locking eyes with some that are in implementation right now who are thinking, how do I do this as fast as possible? So I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, so I love the idea of these lightning talks because really this is a 10-minute topic, and this is, I hope to give some of the lessons that we learned. A little quick background. I'm from Urbana, Illinois, which is one half of Champaign-Urbana, where the University of Illinois is located. Urbana has a population of about 41,000, so I would consider us a small to medium-sized city. I think the most important part is that efficiency is a mandate for us because we don't have a lot of resources to do stuff like this with. So when we rolled into this project, it was important for us to do it fast, to get it over with, and to get something tangible out there quickly. And that's what I want to focus on. The motivations for our Socrata implementation are interesting, I think. I've not quite heard this order yet, so I don't know how unique we are. We actually did this for internal users primarily. The problem, I came in as the IT director almost 2 years ago, and just a little bit of my background, I came from a world of ERP implementations. So very big, scary projects with lots of data and data warehousing and business intelligence and all this great stuff. And I came into the city and we were running these 25 and 30-year-old legacy applications where people were interacting with the data on green bar reports, or in a few cases, green bar reports that had been written to a PDF. Okay, so, you know, high tech. And we really didn't have any reporting tools. And we were not just talking about one system or two systems, we're talking about the majority of our business systems for all the departments lacked any kind of reporting. So we got into a little further and we found out there was a great tool that we already owned, which made it great, called DB2 Web Query, because everything that we were doing, by the way, is on legacy AS400 systems. Who's with me on that? All right. So DB2 Web Query is a tool that we already licensed. Unfortunately, as a reporting tool, it sucks, particularly for the end users. So if our goal was to put the data out in people's hands, we had the ability to pull the data, but we didn't really, we had to get it that last 10 feet to the people. So we started looking at reporting tools, and Socrata kind of came along at the right time, and there we go. So we actually were targeting it for internal people, and oh, by the way, oh, our citizens can access that also? Hey, that's a nice afterthought. So that really was how we flowed into this process. Now, as we've gone along, I think the open data part has bubbled up more and more. This process was actually, for us, driven by IT. And in fact, really, almost to the point that nobody else kind of knew what was going on, so we just kind of slipped it in, which was feasible mostly because we did it very quick and easy, and we were able to quickly present people with a kind of a complete solution already, and then they could just sort of give us feedback on it. And I want to talk about that. By the way, since we've been live, and we went live about 9-10 months ago, since we've been live, I would say our best customers are some of the planning and sort of the urban planners and economic development groups, people who are really a little bit more data with it. We've had other groups that have not quite glommed on as much as I would like, but we're working on it. So I'm kind of a nuts and bolts implementation person, and when I reached out when the Socrata Summit was starting up, I said, hey, you know, I'd like to give kind of a project-y kind of presentation about how do we actually do an implementation. We started talking, and they said, wow, you did this really fast, and I didn't realize that we did it fast because it's very straightforward. So here we go. So what did we do? The question I was asked, and ironically for a lightning talk, I was asked to answer this question. How did you deploy Socrata open data and open expenditures with minimal impact on staff time or workflow, which really is the how. How did we do this? And we did, by the way, open expenditures we did at the same time. It was really just one of the data sets in open data. So nothing too rocket sciencey here for project people. We did 3 phases. And by the way, it was interesting to hear Mayor Jimenez mention this morning about the waterfall approach, kind of the old school process of project deployment. I also came from that world. So for me, what's interesting about this is that this was the most iterative project I've ever worked on, in the sense that the tool lets you kind of quickly deploy and then circle back, and I think that's one of the most positive aspects. So our first phase, about a year ago, we spent 2 months doing this. We set it up and we loaded initial data. And so I broke this down as kind of a table. Again, old school. So what did we do and who did it and how long did it take? The first thing, probably the easiest thing, and the only thing that Socrata really helped us with, was actually deploying the website. So one of the hardest parts was choosing the little tile icons. I delegated, good tie into the keynote speaker. I delegated the color choice to our web administrator. But so it took a couple hours to stand up the environments. Done, great. Then we had to do the data extracts. Now we had been working on a data warehousing project. So we were already a long ways away, along the path for many of our data sets of actually getting the data out. And really, that to me is the real key thing. If you're looking at which parts of this process take the longest, it's getting the data together. So anything you can do to do that up front is going to help. And then once we had the data out there, which we were pulling together by spreadsheet at first, we loaded it and showed it to the departments. And I really think that's a really critical thing, is to show people their own data the way it's going to look. So that was kind of our first phase. Then we did what I called the soft launch. Now, when we showed this to the departments, it led to some interesting discussions. So a big task that occurred next was meeting with the legal team. There were some concerns about some of the data that we had pulled together initially. And so then we had some iterations where we added logic to obscure data. Basically, a lot of times we had to take addresses down to a block level. And specifically, I was telling some people at lunch, with our emergency medical services, with the fire responses, we had to strip out a lot of information. They were very uncomfortable with a lot of the HIPAA-related medical information that might have been released. So we spent a lot of time kind of refining what we were showing. Once we had the data sets pretty much in place, we built a couple of sample views. I'm a big believer that less is more when it comes to these things. We went live with 7 data sets. And that only shows, there were 6 tiles, and that's why I had 7 data sets, so that each tile had a data set. And then we built like 1 or 2 views on each. So really very limited in terms of what we developed. So then we went live. When I say we went live, to me, the definition of going live with Socrata was taking the login with the password off the front page. And then it was live, and the URL directed to it. And so we started sharing that URL with people. We sent it to some of the council members. We sent it to some of the other people who we wanted to give feedback on it. And then I think that led into the third phase, which was the public launch. So some of the initial things that we did between sort of opening up the site and actually talking to people about it, we stopped and we put together a guidebook about our data sets. And remember, there were only 7. So we described what they were, what the fields meant, so that it could sort of stand on its own. Because something that I think is really important about Socrata is that it has to stand on its own. You're not going to be able to answer questions about your data sets to people one-on-one. Although we did do training. And I think this was pretty important because remember, I was trying to get my own internal teams to use it. So we brought the training to them. It was very effective. We could have them sit down, say, hey, what do you want to know? What's a question that you'd like to ask? And then we could build it right there in front of them. Some more data set refining went on from those discussions, so that was important. And I think that's an important note in general, is that even after you launch, there's still going to be an ongoing period of sort of grooming your data sets, improving them, better documentation, better views, the data lens, different ways to improve it over time. So you don't just chuck it out there and stop. You have to keep making it valuable. And then finally, and I think revolutionized for us, we implemented Pentaho. And on Pentaho, all I'll say is come talk to me afterwards or tonight or at some other time. Pentaho is the open source data ETL toolset that Socrata suggested to us that really was very useful and free. So a couple lessons learned, just 3 of them. First of all, start small. Like I said, we went live with 7 data sets. We only have a limited license. We're planning to roll out more data sets. We've added about 5 more. But really, just a slow, gradual process is fine. Get your data together ahead of time. That's where you're going to lose the time, is actually doing all the extracts. And I think you can get a lot of buy-in with people by showing them their own information. So it's not a matter of gathering the support first and then showing the data sets later. Show them the data sets, and then they can gather the support. Oh, that's my timer. OK, thank you very much.